All right, Barbie Jean. Barbie Jean, where'd you grow up? Where are you from originally?
Lombard, Illinois. Very suburbia lifestyle with a close unit family of 4.
Sounds like how I grew up, right down the street.
Yeah,
actually.
special.
Tell me about your family.
My mom and dad are this power couple, and I have a twin identical sister. And, we were just this place that everywhere, all of our friends wanted to come to. Everyone else was getting divorces, and my family was so close and so open and easy to talk to. We went to church every Sunday. We're very active in youth group and outreach and the community. Yeah.
So it sounds like a pretty great childhood.
It was.
What kind of girl were you in high school?
High school was when I started getting a little, probably just confident. I was a cheerleader. I started having sex. And also being a cheerleader, I felt like I was constantly sexualized, being in my tight mini skirt. Being an attractive set of twins also had its level of, being sexualized. I would just see that glimmer in people's eyes, mostly men that would just be thinking about having sex with us or asking us if we've ever hooked up with the same person, always kind of harassing in a different way, inquiring further about what we were into. But we did actually use that to our advantage one day, which is a good story. We were studying abroad together, and this MC, it was like a bar or a club, and this MC was having a pole dancing competition. And he was like, "You girls have to sign up. You have to sign up, and you have to be the twins." So we were like, "Okay, let's do it." We backstage practiced a little bit, got our routine down. We're like, she went low first, and I went high, and we swapped, and then we had a little freestyle, and then we kissed at the end. And that's the only time we've ever kissed. But of course, the crowd went wild. It was wild. It was no question we won, of course. I mean,
Well, right.
So I felt good about that, because I was like, okay, I was like sticking it to all the men and all the people that have, wanted that kinky twin fantasy, but I didn't want to give it to them then. So that felt good at that moment.
In your family, is sex something that's treated as not as something dirty? You guys are pretty open about it?
Yeah. I mean, of course, like when I had sex for the first time, it was, I was so young. So I think my parents were being very protective, and, but in my adult life, it's always been easy to talk about, very open communication. And I remember the first time my mom has a bit of some boundaries. Like when I started dating couples when I moved to LA, I told her I was going on a date with a couple just naturally in conversation. She's like, "Oh, honey, that's too much information for me." I was like, "Okay, noted." Sorry, Mom. So, I know her boundaries. And with my dad, I don't really talk about sex, but I think.
All right. So you guys are pretty normal and private about it all.
Yeah, I guess so.
But so you came to LA when you were how old?
I was 25.
From the Midwest.
I actually moved abroad. I lived in Australia for a year.
Oh, you did?
New Zealand for a year. I had my first interaction with a fetish in Australia for a job. I was struggling to get by, and my friend found this ad on Craigslist for a strong, able-bodied women to perform a fetish. And we were like, "We're strong, we could do this." And he had a fetish for being piggybacked, literally just like wanted to be on our backs. So we went to this yoga studio, and he stripped down to he was in a suit looking normal businessman, stripped down to his yoga shorts, comfy clothes. We stripped down to our bikinis. And I grabbed the camera. It was all videoed, which of course had anxiety and fear, hoping that this video wouldn't surface one day and my mom and dad wouldn't see it. But I kind of swallowed that fear. My friend was very open and fearless. So I just kind of took her lead And we took turns piggybacking this man with his hard cock on my back the whole time around the studio. Yeah, he was on our backs. So we took turns videoing. I felt good with my photography skills. I was getting good angles. You know, we were having fun with it. It was definitely, I mean, my curiosity too was exploding because I was like, how did this kink happen? Like, where did this come from? So as he was on my back, I kept asking him, you know, where it all came from. And he said he grew up in India and was carried around a lot as a kid and just kind of realized that it was something that turned him on. But he was so quiet and scared to share with his friends, people he's dated. He never shared with any of his partners. So I just kept telling him, like, oh my God, there's so much more kinky or weirder shit in the world. Like, just let it out. I'm sure someone would be into it or just want to please you. So, you know, I think from that point forward, I always wanted to be more open and just continuing to just inspire people to be comfortable in their shoes.
And have you explored and kind of branched out from where you find pleasure?
Yeah. Well, I went home when I lived in New Zealand. I went home with a woman for the first time. And so that primarily I was just dating men for, I guess, my 8 years of sexual experiences. And so when I went home with a woman, I remember waking up the next morning and there was just like this beautiful sun like beating on her soft body. And I was like, damn, like I love cock, but I also love pussy. Like what? I don't know. I was very overwhelmed by it because it felt so good. And so that kind of made me interested in couples, group play. So when I moved to LA, it was the perfect opportunity for me to dive into this lifestyle because it's so, I don't know, there's a lot of queer people here. It's easy to connect with like-minded people. I found Fet-life, which is a really good kind of like Facebook for kinky people. You can post photos. You have a profile, people can comment. And I just started meeting all these doms. I was dating some doms in the BDSM community. I met some really cool, just like fluid beings and started going to sex parties every weekend. So I just kind of dove in and began exploring with impact play, like floggers. I really just love the fluidity of being with multiple people at one time. It was just fun to be able to like go out with these friends and then just end up in a naked pile of bodies at the end of the night. I also loved like sucking dicks with men too. That only happened a couple times, but it was just this really, I don't know, raw and vulnerable experience where I feel very fluid in my sexuality. So it was cool to share that with men when that's just a little bit more taboo, I suppose.
When you say with men, you mean other men doing the same thing?
Yeah, like sharing a cock together with a guy. Like that was just like really awesome for me. I was like, this is the best. I need more of this in my life. But then amongst the swinger lifestyle and sex parties and that kind of scene was also the BDSM world. So they overlapped a little bit. But there were some sex dungeons in LA that I went to and frequented, met some really cool dominatrixes that would fuck me, and that was just a blast. And I experienced with just like some fire and just really started just, I don't know, I've always loved exploring. And
it sounds like you're very adventurous.
Yeah, I would say I am.
Are you adventurous in general or just sexually?
I am, yeah. I enjoyed living abroad. I loved, I've been skydiving a few times. I've been bungee jumping a few times. I love that adrenaline high that you get. And I think with sex, it's almost a similar feeling, like an orgasm is just, I don't know, it's very freeing. It's very liberating. And the sensation, I feel, I don't know, it feels just as good as jumping out of a plane to me in a way. I found that a lot of the experiences I was searching for all stemmed from kind of like sensations. I really got into like slapping, like face slapping, because the tingle, not like too hard. I don't love pain. I'm not into sadism or masochism. I don't enjoy bleeding or being bruised, but floggers and feathers, or just a slap, like while I'm peaking and about to orgasm, I kind of channel that sensation through my body, and it just kind of explodes out of me more powerful. I don't know if that makes sense.
It's almost like you have a very wholesome attitude about sex, but you're just a little more adventurous than a lot of vanilla people might be.
Yeah.
It sounds like.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I think a lot of people do have this kinky side to them, and maybe they're scared to let it show. But I think there's a lot more people that are interested in being more adventurous, or, they're tired of the mundane relationships, or after some time, they just get bored. For me, I think I've always, even my first love in high school, he was my second partner, but my first real love, I remember he bought a vibrating cock ring, and I was like, this is awesome. And I was like 17, it was, I think my sexual experiences just continued to get more fun and more kinky, and they still are. My partner installed this really nice bar above our bed, and it has all our chains and ropes hanging from it. So I can't really remember the last time he tied me up. It's been a while, but sometimes I just like grabbing the chain and feeling the coldness of the chain on my skin, or, wrapping my hand with a rope, and just, I don't know, adding these elements to me are visually appealing, but also like sensationally, it feels good.
Do you think there's anything in your childhood that led you down this path, or is it just that you're adventurous?
Yeah, I think my parents always instilled this adventurous spirit in us. They always wanted us to.
Is your twin sister similarly inclined?
She's not as much, but she did have a threesome before I did, which was so inspiring. I was like, whoa, this is my beautiful twin, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, what? Oh my God, this is so hot. And I watched it all happen. I was there. They came onto her, and it was amazing. But anyways, yes, we are both. I think a lot of my friends I surround myself with are very sexual, in tune with our bodies, and we love talking about sex. We've always had this powerful sisterhood dynamic, me and my sister, and I think we've kind of, I don't know, just kind of used that around us too, to create really close groups of friends to this day. And yeah, we're always talking about sex. I mean, anal sex, and just, yeah, oral sex. I feel like I do have an oral fixation. I love having things in my mouth. So oral sex for me is perhaps a kink. I mean, anything can be a kink these days. But, and then masturbation too is huge for me. And that maybe started when I was younger. I remember the first time I ever masturbated, it was like nonstop. I couldn't stop. I stayed up all night. I didn't actually orgasm or anything, but I couldn't stop touching myself in my pajamas. But now I love masturbating on my way to work. I love masturbating while watching TV. I love having a vibrator and my partner's like dick in my mouth at the same time. Like that's like my favorite thing. Or just having, touching myself while I'm getting penetrated. I love that.
I think I find it refreshing to hear somebody speak so casually and openly and in such a straightforward way about things that so many of us are secretly thinking and feeling, but we're just too repressed to express it. I think we're all very repressed.
We are.
Sexually.
Yeah.
Not all.
It's
You're
sad.
not.
Oh, well, thank you. It's sad. I even just at my jobs, I work at a restaurant, or I've worked in bars in the past. I casually kind of mention things with my colleagues about, this awesome foursome I had, or I'll share, whatever it is. And they're always like, whoa, like, Barbie, you're so inspiring.
You're
like,
bringing on judgment.
And you look like you're so normal, but you're actually really kinky and you have this other deviant side of you. And to me, I think we all kind of have it a little bit. And I just like opening people up to it because it's not weird and it shouldn't be repressed. I think ultimately we should embrace whatever feels good, always.
How old are you?
30.
You're 30. Do you find you're getting a little more, you're pushing the boundaries of what you're interested in? Or is it pretty much you're just interested and that's it? It isn't changing so much.
I almost feel like it's more plateauing a little bit. I guess it comes in waves.
Yeah, because it's not like you're going to eventually be into sadomasochism and...
Yeah, like I've definitely figured
bondage.
out my boundaries. I went through a phase since I've been in LA, the last 5 years or so. I dated a lot of people that, I was pushing my boundaries, or I realized once the relationship ended, like, wait a minute, that wasn't really enjoyable for me, or I didn't really realize it and had to, figure it out in hindsight. So I do think I'm a non-monogamous person, but I've been in multiple relationships where it was a free-for-all. You kind of just did whatever the fuck you wanted. And for me, that just, from the beginning, like the first date, I met this guy at a sex party and we started dating. And it was just always him fucking other girls on the side. I was doing whatever I wanted. And it was just it was too much. It gave me a lot of anxiety, and we were just building and like falling for each other. So I figured out that, if I ever have a relationship...
You were falling for each other, but you're cheating constantly?
Well, yeah, exactly. But with consent, I don't like to call it cheating, but I guess...
I've fallen for somebody before. I don't ever think about anybody else.
Right. Well, now my partner, we were pretty monogamous the first year or so, but we love to bring women into our relationship. So I've never had sex with another dude since we've been dating for 3.5 years or so. And I'm pretty happy with that. Like, we've had a little bit of group play with a guy, but it wasn't...
So he gets to have other girls, but you don't get to have other guys.
Well, I think one day I might want that, but for now, I'm pretty happy. I crave feminine touch mostly, and so for me, it's a pleasure to have a woman in our bedroom, and that's what I want right now. Not to say that one day I won't want a couple, and we've talked about it, maybe introducing a couple or introducing a guy, or I think down the road maybe that will happen. But for now, we kind of stick to just kind of exploring together, and it works for us.
I would think good communication is key with these kind of relationships.
It's huge. I mean, that's ultimately what you need with any relationship. And that's what my parents always told me too, was communication. And with him, it's really easy because he's just a no judgment zone. And so even I remember when we kind of were in our first year of dating, I had a girls' night, went out with some girlfriends with dancing. A super sexy woman came up to me and she just started swaying with me, and like our eyes locked, and she kissed me and I kissed her back. I wanted to kiss her, but I felt so guilty afterwards. I was like, oh my God, Hunter's not here. What am I doing? And I called him from the bar sobbing. I was like, baby, I'm so sorry. I kissed this really sexy girl. And he was like, it's okay. It's okay. Like, don't worry about it. Enjoy yourself. You're still coming home to me, right? And I was like, yeah. So it just kind of, I think it's okay to lean into our sexual desires. I think as long as we're open about it and communicate and share, then we'll all be happier.
It's interesting how different the dynamics are for you guys as a couple to introduce other women. That's all cool. Everyone's fine with that. But if you're marching in all these guys, I think it might be a different dynamic.
It is. And I've had that conversation with him before because it's different. It feels different for him too.
Guys get very threatened by it.
Yeah. The jealousy comes in swinging and it's like, whoa, 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 this is a double standard. Like, this isn't fair. But I get it. Like, I'm the bisexual one, I guess, to put a label on it. And sexuality is so fluid, but I would consider him more straight. So it makes sense, I guess, a little bit. Like, I understand his perspective, but it's also not fair. It bothers me. But I think that's why baby steps are important in all relationships. I think ultimately, if we just continue respecting each other and being truthful, then do whatever we want, whatever feels good.
And a big city like Los Angeles or New York or Chicago will have enough of this kind of community that you could easily meet somebody that's into the same kind of thing.
Yeah, the community's huge. I mean, like I mentioned before, the Fet-life was a great way for me to meet like-minded people. Field is like a really great dating app for couples. I went through a phase of, really loving just being with couples and being their like plaything, their unicorn for the night. But yeah, there was like WhatsApp groups. Now there's Discord groups. Kik groups. It's just like once you meet people, you're just kind of, and I guess it's maybe easier for me being an attractive woman, but I feel like when I got here and just met a few people, it was like, whoa, all these doors were just opening. I could go to any like sex party any weekend I wanted, or all these cool dungeons and clubs that were throwing all these awesome parties. And it was just like playtime. I just always was like, oh, let's go play, and sometimes I wouldn't have sex. Sometimes I would just enjoy myself or watch. I guess on the topic of fetishes, that's another one. I love to be a voyeur. Exhibitionism too. I love to be seen. But I also just love enjoying people and seeing what they're into, and my curiosity and my imagination just runs wild.
And having all these interactions with people that you just met and you may never see again, does it ever leave you just like empty, or at the end of the night you're like, what am I doing?
Yeah, there's been moments. I think there's also been parties that haven't felt as good as others. Yeah, and I remember questioning like how these people were serving me and my I suppose my everyday life, and if they were connections that, I guess were benefiting me. And I continue to do that with just my friendships. I think it's good to analyze all of your relationships. But yeah, of course, when some people are just after sex, I think it's hard not to feel a little bit lonely in your thoughts when you're like, wait a minute, am I pimping myself out, or am I disrespecting my body? But ultimately, I kind of realized that you just have to, you have to find the right people. And it all has to do with energy, and I guess I keep saying respect, but it's just in communication. And I think once you find those people that are into it as much as you are, I think also now I'm not going to sex parties every weekend. Like that was maybe like the younger me, but we still enjoy a little bit of kink and a little bit of playtime. So I think it's just also finding that balance with where you are at in life and feeling pretty good.
Is there any chance that maybe you're replacing the risk and the danger of a real romantic connection with someone where you might get your heart broken, you might be disappointed terribly, with all these little interludes that are just like fun distractions, but will never amount to anything substantial?
Yeah, perhaps in the previously when I
would
first...
think you could feel very empty after a few weekends of that. And it's like,
yeah, I think there was a phase where I was a bit lost, and I was at this time also dating like a sadist. So he was super into like beating me and punishing me. And so I think I just didn't understand where my boundaries were. And I think I was doing it so much, that was my lifestyle. Essentially, it was just, instead of going out to the bar, I was going to sex parties on the weekends. And so, yeah, you're not wrong. There's definitely
Because when love hits you, it's a miracle. And
Right.
There's nothing else like it.
Right.
And having sex with a bunch of random people every weekend or every week or whatever is not a replacement.
Yeah.
At least for me.
It was, it wasn't essentially what I enjoyed long term, but I do think it created this energy within me that still is flourishing with my partnership now. And I do feel like I found the love of my life now, and he welcomes like this side of me. And he wants to continue exploring and growing our sexuality together. And so
bringing
it
other women
feels,
in.
not everyone. We're very, we're very cautious of who we bring in now. I mean, there's also like crazy STIs and STDs right now. I don't know if you're aware of this.
I'm not.
Ever since COVID, like people weren't going to the doctors and people weren't getting their check-ins because, you know, it just wasn't as available. And there was just this huge like bloom of STDs. And there were a few sex parties that we were invited to, but we didn't go, where, you know, it's just like little ones where you can just take a pill and it goes away, but still it's like, you know, you don't want it, right? So it makes me a little bit more cautious and picky and just aware that that's out there. But of course, when you're having sex, you just have to be aware that that's a possibility. Just like when you have anal sex, you have to be aware maybe some poop will come out. So, but
after all these experiences you've had, these adventures, sexual adventures, what would you say is the most important thing you've learned about yourself, about relationships, about love?
Good question. Boundaries, I think, was a huge one. You know, there's been multiple times where I felt my boundaries were crossed, but maybe because of some of those situations, I wasn't really able to understand my own boundaries or even voice them because I don't know why. I didn't know. Or, you know, sometimes when you're put in an uncomfortable situation where you thought it would feel good, but then it doesn't, you get like numb and you just kind of retreat. So I think for me, I've been in some situations with just sexual assault or just uncomfortable situations where people didn't ask my consent before they slapped me or before they did certain things. And it just really made me realize that it's important. I mean, I guess communication too. It's just important to know your boundaries and what you're comfortable with and voice those to your sexual partners to let them know. And you might not always know ahead of time, but I think as I've gotten older and the more sex I've had and the more experiences I've had, I've realized that it's just really important to know those limits and welcome them and not be afraid. Like just because this person is able to fuck a new person every week doesn't mean that you have to be, you know. I think I just like dove headfirst into this lifestyle, and now like in hindsight, it's like, okay, there's little bits and pieces of it that I really want to use for the rest of my life with my partnership, but also, you know, there's also ways to do it that are healthier for me or that make me feel better.
Do you ever feel like you're being disrespected or objectified and you're just like something to be used? I don't mean to be a prude, but it's like, you know, sometimes it's just especially for a female, you're there for one thing. Nobody really cares about your heart. They're just...
Yeah, it's more about the pleasure, which is why I kind of call it playtime. For me, I guess I can separate sex as more of a pleasurable, for the orgasm. You know, I'm, I guess, more as a man in that way because I can just have sex and not have like a
connection,
intimate or a deep connection. Like I can just want to fuck you because you look good or you have this awesome energy or I like your shoes. You know, I don't know. That's a dumb example, but I guess you know what I mean. Yes. But yeah, there has been times. There was a time when I was at a party and I was giving my friend head and this guy was behind me and he was like coming up to like put himself in me. And my friend was like, whoa, 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 aren't you going to ask her permission first? And I like looked back and there was this guy standing there that I didn't know. So yeah, it's sad to think that some people see me and want to use me as this hole that they can penetrate. And that ruined, I mean, the vibe ruined my vibe for the rest of that night. But of course, you're always going to meet some people that are disrespectful and that only see you as an object. But I think as long as I see myself as more than that, and I know what I'm signing up for and why I'm here and why it feels good. And
you're just having some fun.
Yeah, I'm just having fun, ultimately. Exactly.
Have you ever had someone you've fallen in love with and you just want to be with them and no one else?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was in a few monogamous relationships before, like in college and in high school. It's hard for me to imagine because I really love women and female bodies. And so, I don't know, maybe I'll end up with a woman someday, but I'm pretty madly in love with my current partner and he's a male. I don't know. I guess I like the fantasy of having a core man and then also having a woman. So
the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I guess I do want the best of both worlds. But I also think that maybe that'll go away. I don't know. I guess I'm just open to whatever feels good. And as long as, like, if my partner came to me tomorrow and was like, listen, I don't want us to be with other people, then yeah, I'd probably say, okay, like, I love you so much. Yeah, of course. But I think with both of us, we both love it. I mean, who wouldn't, for him anyways, who wouldn't love it? You got like these two beautiful women in your bed. But it's usually, I mean, I'm the queen. So I remind him of that too. You know, it's all about my pleasure. This is about me. Of course, I care about your pleasure too, but ultimately, this is something that, yeah, we want it together, but I'm curating the experience. And I like that he always treats me with respect and always treats me as the queen.
That's important.
Yeah, that's the key.
All right, Barbie Jean, thank you so much for sharing your
Thank
story.
you.
Very
I appreciate you.
Thank you very much.